A human tooth about 2 million years old, a mysterious skull with strange symbols, mythical creatures in the basement, and much more you will see in this video. And you will also find out what archaeologists managed to find after the X-ray of the mummies. Hi friend, you're on the KirTop channel. Human skeleton in a flooded cave. At the beginning of the video, we will go to the Caribbean coast of Mexico in a cave system that was flooded at the end of the Ice Age. Here, an amateur archaeologist discovered the skeleton of a prehistoric man that is over 8,000 years old. I want to note that these are not the first human remains discovered in the caves of Mexico. At this point, the government plans to build a high-speed train through the jungle and attract tourists. And as often happens, the best archaeological discoveries occur in the places of future construction. Archaeologists and divers claim that the skeleton was too far from the entrance to the cave, which means that the ancient man could not have swum that far without the use of modern equipment. According to other studies, the water level was much lower around that time, so the caves were flooded after people began to live here. Who the skeleton belongs to and what its exact age remains to be seen, but we know exactly where one of the oldest human teeth on the planet was found. 1.8 million year old human tooth. And now we will go to Georgia, to the South Caucasus. It is here that one of the earliest prehistoric settlements in Europe is located. And the other day again, archaeologists were in for an incredible surprise. They found one of the oldest teeth on the planet belonging to the human species. This once again confirms that Georgia was one of the first places where our ancestors went to conquer Europe. Most likely, the European species of man originated from this region. The tooth was found about 100 kilometers from the capital of Georgia, Tbilisi, in the village of Orzmany. Stone tools and animal remains were previously found here, but the remains of Homo erectus were discovered here for the first time. Not far from this place, in the late 90s, early 2000s, human skulls aged 1.8 million years were found here. It was the first find of its kind outside of Africa. This forced scientists to change their understanding of the migration of the human species. Based on these findings, archaeologists claim that Georgia was one of the first places where ancient man arrived during his migration from Africa. According to Georgi Bedzanashvili, scientific leader of the excavation team, this tooth belongs to the cousin of Zeva and Mzea. This was the name of the owners of the fossilized skulls which were discovered earlier in the Dmanisi. But the oldest fossilized remains of the genus Homo are still considered to be part of the jaw found in Ethiopia. It is about 2.8 million years old. Scientists suggest that the first migrations began about 2 million years ago, although ancient tools have been discovered in China that are 2.1 million years old. This suggests that we still have a lot to learn about the ancient world. That's why our channel is here to help you, and we move on. Royal Crypt in Peru. This time we will go to South America, where treasure hunters from all over the world have been stealing ancient burials in Peru for decades. Fortunately, they missed the huge royal crypt, which belonged to a little-studied civilization. Under a layer of sand, this crypt hid from robbers for more than 1,000 years. In the town of El Castillo de Huami, Professor Milos Kush, in his entire life, saw many terrible things that he hadn't seen anywhere else on our planet. Here we found the remains of ancient insects that fed on human flesh, and snakes coiled into rings at the bottom of ceramic vessels. And during one of the expeditions, a swarm of giant bees flew into archaeologists. It's like the plot of a movie. But this is exactly what the work of archaeologists in the impenetrable jungle looks like, and also that we can explore the ancient world. For more than 100 years, tomb raiders have hoped to find a tomb with mummies wrapped in precious fabrics and adorned with precious stones. Milos Kirsch believed that in El Castillo, he could find that very mysterious tomb, although most of the people from his entourage dissuaded him from this expedition. He believed that some important event of that time took place in this place about 1,000 years ago. Many artifacts of the Peruvian Huari civilization were found in these parts. Thanks to the drone, a group of researchers managed to see the outlines of the walls on the hill. It turned out that this was only the beginning of a great expedition. Hidden underground was a gigantic labyrinth of high walls and towers. Archaeologists even managed to determine that the walls were painted bright red. Under the ground, it was possible to discover the royal tomb with 4 queens and more than 50 remains of noble persons. Copper axes, silver bowls, and gold jewelry, this is what black diggers hunted for. And only Milas Kirsch managed to find it in the tomb in El Castillo. In ancient times, it was believed that the status of a person is important not only during life, but also after death. Therefore, the burial of important people was so rich. From the little information that we know about the Huari civilization, we know that women were skilled craftswomen and made fabrics that were better than the Flemish and Dutch weavers of the 16th century. Mystery of the Black Slime. Scientists have finally solved the mystery of the black slime often found in Egyptian tombs. In 2018 in Alexandria, archaeologists unearthed a giant black sarcophagus that was completely filled with this terrible substance. And only a few years later, scientists were able to understand what it is. Let me remind you that scientists and historians expected to see Alexander the Great in this sarcophagus, but when they opened it, they were amazed. There were 3 skeletons in it, 2 men and 1 woman. These skeletons were filled with a black substance. Conspiracy theorists joined the study. They claimed that by opening this tomb, humanity would be cursed, and those who opened it would release a black force that would spread throughout the planet. Fortunately, scientists are not cowards. The researchers collected more than 100 samples of mucus from other ancient Egyptian burials. The analysis showed that the mucus consists of vegetable oil, tree resin, beeswax, animal fat, and bitumen. At least all of the samples contained ingredients. Only the proportions differed. Interestingly, all of these ingredients were imported to Egypt, and the mixing was carried out by dedicated specialists. First, the mummy was immersed in a sarcophagus, and then it was coated or filled with this liquid. Most likely, in addition to the religious meaning, black mucus also helped as a preservation of the deceased. It was believed that in this way the mummy would be safe, both spiritually and physically. 1,000-year-old Mayan settlement. A mysterious ancient Mayan settlement was discovered by archaeologists in a Mennonite farming settlement. The ruined dwellings look like white mounds. Scientists have studied pottery found in these places and dated it between 250 and 600 AD. As you know, this period went down in history for its large-scale construction and urbanization. In those days, the Maya had a well-developed artistic art. The buildings have plastered floors and a collection of domestic cooking vessels, and in some buildings, archaeologists have found agricultural tools made of flint. The Maya had a well-developed agriculture, and they used the forests to breed animals in their natural environment. This is indicated by the massive accumulation of bones in this area. One of the buildings looked like an ancient temple, completely plastered with white limestone, and the flint items found there were most likely used as ceremonial offerings. Skull with strange symbols. A sensational discovery was shown to the public by Mexican researcher Pablo Enrique Garcia Sanchez. He stated that not only people lived on Earth, but as evidence he showed a certain skull. However, this find raises many questions. About 4 years ago, near the city of Taxco, miners approached Pablo Garcia. They said that at a depth of 30-35 years, they began to find very strange objects. The collection of artifacts surprised even the explorer. The miners brought to the surface beads made of various semi-precious stones, a jade blade, and various amulets and talismans made of bone. These finds amazed the archaeologists, and he turned to the government with a request to excavate the mine and close it for a while. After obtaining permission, he immediately began excavations. He managed to find more than 100 household items, ritual tools, and jewelry. But what is unique in all this is something else. Almost every item had inscriptions in an unknown language. And at the beginning of this year, a group of archaeologists led by our hero found a skull of an unusual shape. Scientists immediately conducted a thorough analysis of the object. Dating showed that it was over 16,000 years old. The skull had inscriptions similar to artifacts found earlier. DNA analysis revealed 4 strands instead of 3. Pablo Garcia considered this skull to be divine. He is sure that the gods of the ancient Indians visited our planet tens of thousands of years ago, and this skull belongs to one of the ancient deities. But the rest of the items, he believes that they were produced by ordinary people. Last year at the same place, archaeologists found a 4-toed mummy of a creature that looked like a dog. Pablo did not manage to conduct a DNA analysis. Of course, scientists in Mexico for the most part did not believe Pablo Enrique and consider him a charlatan. However, some scientists argue that this is a real sensation, which 100% confirms the existence of paleocontacts in antiquity. What do you think? How real are the skull and artifacts found in the mine? X-ray of ancient mummies. 2015 Pachacamac archaeological site in Peru. 200 mummified remains discovered. Most of them were wrapped with several layers of fabric, and so that when trying to deploy them, the mummies did not collapse. It was necessary to use modern technologies. Canadian scientists from the University of Western Ontario scanned ancient mummies using a mobile X-ray complex. They have been dated to 1100 and 1470 AD. In 6 days, anthropologists took about 900 X-rays and performed more than 30 computer scans. Later, with the help of specialized computer programs, all the photographs were combined into a digital image. Thus, it was possible to understand that not all mummies were preserved in good condition, and in some pictures, they were in for a surprise. In the heads of the mummies were mysterious artifacts, the purpose of which is still unclear. One of the artifacts looked like a bent disc. Archaeologists nicknamed it tacos. In one mummy, a sharp object was examined in the eye socket, and in the other, a tattoo was noticed on the arm. One mummy was covered in cotton seeds. Scientists have not yet been able to explain the reason for this. It was assumed that this was done for ritual purposes. In the tissues with which the mummies were wrapped, scientists examined small shells, stone, and unidentified artifacts. Despite such a huge number of mummies in one place, archaeologists still have the main question. The mummification procedure was carried out deliberately, or was it the result of a dry climate and burial in the sand helped the mummies survive to this day? Mythical creatures in the basement. It's 2006, England. A team of workers planned to demolish the house. It was the most ordinary day. The workers did not even suspect what kind of surprise they would expect during work. Going down to the basement, the workers found something. In the basement, they found hundreds of cardboard boxes. To their delight, they thought that the boxes contained very old aged wine. But if there was wine in the boxes, then this video would be released on another channel. They opened the boxes and saw mummies in them. They were not human mummies or even animals. They were strange mummies of some mythical creatures. Hundreds of mummies of different fairies and gnomes. They were very frightened and decided to check who originally owned this mansion. The first owner of the house was named Thomas Theodore Merling. Believe it or not, this man lived to be 160 years old, and he always looked younger than his peers. Those who knew him personally said that at the age of 80, he looked 40. There were many legends about this man, and it was believed that he had invented the elixir of eternal youth. But as I said earlier, he only lived to 160. This unique man was born in the north of England in the city of Hallinshire in 1782. In the 19th century, Thomas Theodore Merling traveled the country displaying his unique collection of mythical creatures. It was called the Merling Cryptide Collection. Unfortunately, in those days his tour was not a success, and many considered him a scammer. Personally, I think that now he would have much more fans. There is a feeling that people these days believe much more nonsense. Thomas wrote about his failures and achievements in a diary that was found next to the mummies. The cause of death is still not known. Arrow of the Unfortunate Hunter. Glacial archaeology no longer seems to be something new and unique. With the global melting of glaciers, archaeologists have more work to do. It's just that now you have to dress warmer and go to excavations in rather deserted places. As part of glacial archaeology, scientists study ancient biological materials such as dung, food, and plant remains, and artifacts that have been stored under ice for a long time. The first and one of the most important ice finds was a mummy discovered in 1991 by German tourists in the Ostel Alps. This find is more than 5,000 years old. I already talked about this mummy in one of my previous videos. This year, on the 1st of September, archaeologists found an ancient arrow which is tentatively 800-900 years old. Upon closer examination, archaeologists discovered that on one side the arrow was broken and the ancient hunter was trying to repair it, but most likely here the hunter was overtaken by failure. After all, he did not succeed in using the arrow. Scientists in a detailed study noticed that this arrow never penetrated into any living organism. In addition to the arrow, archaeologists have found several remains of textiles. The purpose is not yet known. There is an assumption that these could have been pieces from a larger fabric, perhaps his clothes or a bag, maybe linen or cotton. Interestingly, until 1813, there was a ban on the import of cotton in Norway, and the found pieces of fabric are much older. Most likely, the owner of the arrow was a traveler and arrived in Norway from warmer countries. Unfortunately, the video has come to an end, but you can leave a kind comment in support of the channel. I read all the comments and even try to answer some. Thanks for the views. Bye everyone!